Now that we have your undivided attention, this edition of Performance TV presents a plethora of hypo installs, from muscle cars to trucks. So hurry up and get ready. We're about to begin.
Welcome to another edition of Performance TV. Whether you call them parking brakes, emergency brakes, like I still refer to them as, you don't want to have something in your vehicle that is going to be subpar, made with plastic and subpar parts. Bruin brake cables, Rick Galshay, you can take care of that for us, and something that is made here in the USA. Tell us about some of these brake cables that we find in our production vehicles.
Well, if you go to your local auto parts store, you don't know what you're going to be getting. A lot of auto part retailers are bringing parts from overseas and sticking them in their boxes. Bruin brake cables makes parts the old-fashioned way. We use quality components in all our brake cables. They're pressure tested to over 1,000 pounds. We use steel, where you might find pot metal and zinc and other types of combinations. The best way to kind of illustrate our point.
All right, Rick, now let's see the Bruin brake cable. We've got a nice looking Dodge truck here. I say we get a good Bruin brake cable on and see how easy it is to install. So we're going to go to the man in charge here, Director of Operations at Bruin Brake Cables, Brian Brum. Brian, I've already got some stuff sprayed on here, so.
This is where you release all the tension from the brake system. You just start with the equalizer here, you loosen this nut, and then that releases the tension, and then you can take all the cables off after that. So after we loosen the tension, we take this fitting out, and then we can start working on the wire connector to take that out. You just
push that on through. Yeah, because we're actually going to save this part through here. We will reuse all
Yeah,
of
we
this.
have to reuse this, and then, but we just have to take it all apart. And then we can reuse this, because even though it's a little rusty, it'll still work.
Actually, a little trick that Brian's going to show us here is going to save you guys a lot of time and headache on taking out the housing fittings.
With this hose clamp, what we do is we put it over the housing fitting. A lot of them have a prong on either side that we need to compress, so that way we can actually release the cable from its mounting hole.
So now that we have the cable off from back there, wow, look here, Brian, we have plastic, right, to start with. Maybe I should use the hammer on this one this time. Little easy trick to help release this from the back. You can just take the cable and push on it, and it's gonna pop right out. And hey, another place that you get to use your trusty little hose clamp trick too.
Yep. And then once you release the clamp, we can just slide it right out.
Awesome. We go ahead and pop that out of there. Now we're going to install this Bruin brake cable. First, we're going to stick this up here. Got it into place. And slide the spring back. Now, you want to go ahead and hold on to that for me? And I'll take this side over here. See if I can pull this out. Ta-da. Now we can hook them back up here.
We just got to run this housing fitting back through its mounting hole again. Give it a good pull, and then it's ready to go.
Now that we have the back two brake cables taken care of, what we need to do is take care of the one that goes up in the cab.
So then after we have the housing fitting released, we take this rubber grommet, we push it up into the cab, so that way we can pull the cable out.
Okay, we've dropped the truck down on the ground so we can get the door open here. So all we need to do is we need to pop off the sill plate here, pull this panel off. So we've got our grommet here, and now we'll need to release this one up here on the inside where we actually have the brake pedal. Couple of different things that we need to do here between the old cable and the new cable. First, Brian, I know you need to go ahead and put the intermediate cable back on, which is actually part that is underneath the truck. What I need to do is get the grommet off, and we went ahead and cut the end of this off to make it a lot easier to slide off of here. Okay, Brian, got the grommet back on. Just had to use a little stuff to squeeze that on there with. That was about where we had it. All we need to do is lift that carpet back up, run it down through. I'll get it ready for you. We'll put this thing back up in the lift. Hook her back up. Brian, you did a good job there. You know, if you ever have any questions about how much to tighten that, just check out your owner's manual. Rick, you guys have how many different part numbers?
We have about 3,000 different brake cables that we offer. We cover all the vehicles, antique cruisers, muscle cars, and late model. But for your 4x4s, we'll do a custom cable. All we need to know is what the kind of lift it is, the type of fittings there are, and we'll put together a custom cable for you so you can tie it up along the frame and along the area so it'll keep it safe.
And if you want to find out more about any of their products, you can hop on BruinBrakeCables.com or AutoPartsNetwork.com.
This edition of Performance TV, presented by ARP, is being brought to you by ARP, the world leader in fastener technology. Steel Rubber, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. American Racing Headers, made entirely in the USA. Tool Tote, proudly made in the USA. And by Dino-Lock, we've got your tail covered. Performance TV, presented by ARP, coming to you from Boyle Commerce Park.
Whether you have a gas motor, whether you have diesel, you need to hear about this product line, Power Curve. And tell me about some of your products here and how they work.
Okay, if anything to do with machinery, we cover it. It's our XP12, which is a metal treatment that goes in any lubricating fluid. Doesn't change the viscosity of the fluid, doesn't change the additive package that's in the fluid from the refiner. That being said, it can be used in any lubricating fluid. Drops temperatures, reduces friction by at least 75%. This is our Diesel XP, the fuel conditioner. It has a little bit of the XP12 in it to add lubricity back into the fuel. We deal with the water differently than anyone else does. We actually microemulsify the water, break it down below 500 nanometers, coat it with a lubricant, and run it on into the combustion chamber. With it being that small, it doesn't hurt any of the injection system.
Now, what about the folks that are running the biodiesels? Helping out with it all with algae?
Because the algae is a big problem, not only biodiesel, but petroleum diesel, because the water that's in the diesel fuel, regardless of where it comes from. That's where we microemulsify and really help things out.
Or even marine, and you actually have a couple of products here that are very similar.
Right, the problem marine industry is having right now is with the ethanol. Ethanol is really tearing up things. Ethanol etches metal. It just dries things out. This actually encapsulates the ethanol, keeps it from doing damage to the primary fuel system. Also stabilizes it because it'll double your shelf life on your gasoline. Gas booster is an octane boost. It also deals with the ethanol same way. It lubricates and extends the shelf life on your gasoline again. The MXP is for motorcycles. It's based on the XP12. It's just made for higher revving, higher stress engines. Marine XP is made for higher moisture content. So
Makes
obviously
sense.
in marine you're going to have
Right.
that. Okay, our XP 7000 is a cleaner that's used in the gas tank on regular intervals to keep the fuel system clean.
Pretty much cover it all here. What about something for air conditioning? Can you help us out
We
there?
have an XP AC. This actually takes the friction out of the compressor. We can lower vent temperatures by at least 10 degrees.
Wow, I think you could use that.
This truck's air conditioning doesn't work. Will, could you fix me up with a little of that on this truck right now?
I believe we can fix you up right there.
I don't know what he's doing out there, but it's getting better. It's getting cooler quicker. I'm pretty impressed with this. 43, still going. Got any meat you want to freeze?
What I would like to see is this amazing demonstration that you have here to talk about the base product of Power Curve that's actually in the whole line here.
We'll start this with some basic 2050 straight motor oil. This is showing metal to metal against each other with the straight motor oil in a bath. You'll also see for every pound of pressure put on this torque wrench puts 100 pounds of pressure down here.
Okay.
The ammeter will show how much power it takes to overcome the friction that's generated.
Yeah, this is brand new, fresh motor oil.
Fresh motor oil. Typically about right there, that's about 1,500 pounds of pressure. It goes away. But if you notice the ammeter, how much power it takes. Now, so this is what it's done to that bearing. See how rough that bearing surface is?
Yeah, it is.
How sharp the edges are?
Yep.
We'll put a little bit of our XP12. This is our metal treatment. We only need just a couple drops. We'll go back with same damaged bearing. Now, at about 160 degrees, the pores in the metal start to open up, and when they do, this actually penetrates into the metal and stops your wear. Normally, right there is where the motor oil quits. Okay, but as you build into it, so you notice the ammeter hadn't moved. I've got
No,
3-4
it hasn't.
times the pressure on it. So I've taken at least 75% of the friction out of that surface. If you notice what I've done to that bearing,
It's smooth.
polished and smooth. So I've literally stopped the wear. Now, you think that's nice. Well, look at this. Every time an engine manufacturer says anything about wear, they always tell you the worst thing you can do to your engine is start it. It's called a dry start. But if you're protected with Power Curve, you have no dry starts because it is in the metal. If you notice that, bearing, still polished.
Not rough.
And it's cool. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, we'll take a little bit of brake clean. Give it a shot of brake clean on that wheel.
Anything else, it would take right off there.
Anything else takes it off. But if you notice, it's in the metal. So, and it's still cool, still polished.
Yeah, it is. And this, what you just showed us here, is what all of the rest of your line is based off of. When it comes to the diesel, you actually took it a little step further, though.
And I can take the diesel and do the same demonstration. It actually has a better lubricating quality than motor oil. This is actually made for it. Plus, that bottle there treats 338 gallons.
That's quite a bit for a bottle this size. Well, I tell you what, thoroughly impressed with your entire line here, what you were able to do with the air conditioning, what little you were able to show us of your extensive line here. And if folks want to find out more, well, where can they do so?
PowerCurve.net.
Welcome back to Performance TV as we continue here at Little Power Shop in Bradford, Pennsylvania. And John Anderson and I putting ARP head studs in this Dodge truck here. Why would we want to change the head studs?
Well, we installed an industrial injection twin turbo system on this. We just about have that finished up. And we're going to be running higher boost pressures, 75, 80 pounds of boost. So when we're pushing that kind of boost, it'll lift the head unless we have something good like the ARP fasteners in there.
Tell me all about this industrial injection turbo.
It's an add-on system. So basically what we're doing is we're leaving the stock turbo in place, stock manifold, all the stock plumbing stays put, and we're adding the second turbo on. It's a Borg-Warner S474. By adding this second turbo and building this compound setup, flat out running as long as he wants, it's never going to go over 1200 degrees. By adding this second turbo and the compound effect, Industrial puts it out, and I think they spec it that it'll do 75 pounds of boost all day, no problem.
We need to get the oil line in. A lot of folks wonder, hey, how's this thing going to get lubricated?
Yeah, and that's really nice about this kit. There's a port right here on the top of the oil filter housing. A fitting screws right in there. You take a plug out. This line goes right over and hooks to the turbo. For the drain line, there's a port on the side of the block. It's like a freeze plug. You pop it out, and it goes right in the oil pan. It's one of the nicest kits we've ever done. The exhaust pipe in the back, because the exhaust actually comes out of the small turbo and feeds into this turbo. That's what this pedestal's mounted on. And then they have a new downpipe that goes in the back. It's already preformed. It doesn't hit the firewall. You don't have to smash the floorboards in like some kits we've seen.
Now, I know this guy had to have had a cold air kit on this truck.
Yeah, that's...
Is that one going to go back in here, John?
Nope, the stock ones won't match up to the turbo, because the stock one went all the way down to that lower turbo. So we need something different that comes off this. And Industrial Injection got with S&B filters, and they have a custom setup right there that is made specifically for this turbo. One of the problems we have, especially guys that drag race, sled pull, or tow for an extended period of time, this turbo gets warm. And right here you have really close to the firewall, so you have a heat problem. The other thing, with one of these blankets over the turbo, it also keeps the heat in the turbo and helps it spool up faster. And then all we really have left is that cold air intake. One of the great things about this kit, this is going to make your truck run cleaner, less smoke. It's going to increase fuel economy, and pretty much any Cummins, even up to the brand newest ones.
And as promised, we're going to put in a new transmission in this truck, but it comes with something very special, and that's this ATS Copilot. What all does it do?
It's a standalone transmission management device, basically. It can control when the converter locks up and how hard, and it also controls the shifts. So when you're driving along, especially a high horsepower truck like this, nice smooth driving, you want nice, clean, soft, crisp shifts.
We've already got the harness installed down here, so that way we can just go ahead and plug this in. You can pick your spot where you want to mount it on the dash, and it's all right there. Well, now that we have the truck up on the lift, John, we're going to be putting in an ATS Stage 5 transmission. This isn't actually the transmission that's going to go in the Dodge, because you guys work on all kinds of vehicles here. This is one for Ford, but it's very similar to what we're going to be putting in here. What makes this a better tranny? I mean, right off the bat, I'm seeing a huge pan here.
It does hold more capacity. This pan helps cool the oil too, because it has cooling fins on the bottom. But the important parts about this transmission is the torque converter especially. It's got what they call a 5-star viscous torque converter. And what that means is this is better at transferring power at low speeds. So if you're pulling a trailer, it's easier on the transmission. It's actually cooler and transfers more power, more fuel efficient, more power to the ground.
John, what is this fuel pump sump that we're putting in by the folks at Beans?
It's something they came up with for guys with aftermarket fuel systems. And the way this works is this sump bolts to the bottom of the tank. And a lot of times when you put in an aftermarket fuel system, you have to drop the tank to put the draw straw on the top of it. Well, this you don't have to. You drill a hole in the bottom of the tank, you slide this piece up inside. that bolts right to it and seals off the tank. Not only do you get a better fuel supply here, you didn't have to drop the tank, and you get all the fuel out of the tank, whereas most draw straws will leave 4 or 5 gallons in there that you can't get out.
Looks like it comes with everything you need, with the gasket and all of the other accessories too. John, you can have the best transmission in the world, but if you're not putting the right fluid in there, well, it's not going to last very long. Why Champion and why all synthetic?
All synthetic oil has better wear properties than a regular oil. It sheds heat a lot better for the fluid coupling and the torque converter. And the other great thing about this Champion oil, it's one of the only ones on the market that you can use in the new Ford transmissions. It's good enough for Mercon SP. And pretty much any oil on the market, you can put this in your transmission with great result.
All right, put this thing up on the dyno, John, and to be able to see all the stuff that we've done here over the past couple of weeks. What did she do on the dyno?
Well, it did pretty good. This is going to be stock horsepower graph and stock torque graph right here. So over a stock truck, this thing is tremendous. The exhaust gas temperatures stayed cool on the dyno, but we're making 70 some pounds of boost. There's a limiter in the computer and it's cutting the fuel. You can see a drastic drop there. So what we're going to do is we're going to get an EFI Live out. We're going to basically reprogram the computer for all these modifications, and this line should continue well up into the 500s.
Well, these are all things you wouldn't have known until you put it on the dyno first, because you got to do that first. I'll tell you what, John, it has been a great 2 weeks being here, and if folks want to find out more, you can just go to littlepowershop.com about all the things that you do. But I've been gone for 2 weeks, and Tommy's back in the studio in Johnson City, and I hear he needs some help, and I got to get out of here. John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This edition of Performance TV, presented by ARP, is being brought to you by Ecosystems, home of the Ecosystems Fuel Enhancer. Low-Carb Performance Products, quality plain and simple. CRC, chemical solutions to keep you moving. Quick Fuel, innovators in fuel systems. And by Palmer Performance Engines, the industry leader in vehicle diagnostic and communication software.
Welcome back to Performance TV. You know, Tommy, with all of the vehicles that are coming out of the manufacturers today, you really wouldn't think one of the biggest weak links might be in the ignition.
Well, they build all this power, but yet sometimes they forget you got to have a lot of spark for that power. So today's products here, Weapon X has brought a lot of neat innovations to the ignition system for all these cars. We've got a Shelby 500. I'm wanting to get some of this stuff on here. So you guys talk a little bit about it. I'm going to get busy working.
Yeah, I'm pretty anxious. And Mark, this is a Ford part here, but what car? Something like we would find back here?
Yes, exactly. This ignition coil actually directly came out of the Ford GT 500. It is a stock OEM ignition coil. Basically, what Weapon X did is we came up with something called direct fire technology. What you're going to find here on every Motorcraft ignition coil is basically the ignition coil connects to the spark plug using a spring interconnect. You've got a lot of resistance in the circuit, and several manufacturers do the same thing. So what we do is we redesign the ignition coil from the ground up. So we have an axial design using direct fire technology that extends the power stage of the ignition coil and attaches it directly to the spark plug.
Show us the end of the spark plug going in the OEM first.
It's loose, poor connection, bad conductors. It's just a bad design overall.
Yeah, now check this out. This is pretty sweet.
With the Weapon X stuff, locked in, not going anywhere.
Didn't I hear something about these are in the 1000s?
Exactly. The Shelby 1000 produces an amazing 1200 horsepower. And in the Shelby 1000, they actually use our ignition components.
So we are going to be installing the same ones that are in the Shelby 1000s in this Shelby 500.
Exactly.
Oh, this owner is going to be really happy.
With all of our components, what we try to do is create a spark plug or create an ignition coil that is highly efficient. We use actually an aviation style triple iridium electrode. This actually ensures a reliably lit combustion event every time. Most spark plugs come with internal resistors of 5,000 to 10,000 ohms. In a lot of our products, what we do is completely eliminate the resistance or lower the resistance to about 2,500 ohms.
Let's check in and see how Tommy's coming along.
Well, I got all my coils out, and I heard you guys talking about spark plugs.
Got spark plugs. Here's your new coils. And as a matter of fact, Mark's got our spark plugs for us. Now, why did you start on this side over here and leave this for me?
You guys need to get busy. You got a little work to do over there?
Yes, we do. All right.
I mean, this was relatively easy.
The most complicated part of the whole process is just pulling off the intake.
You could just replace the coils without the plugs, but if you're going to do it, you might as well do the whole work.
Exactly. The whole point, like I said, is to improve the efficiency so that we can take that input energy from the ignition coil and create more spark energy.
And now it's time to install the coils. Is there any tips or tricks to installing these Weapon X coils?
A lot of people have a problem installing the ignition coils properly, and that's because of the direct fire technology. It makes it more difficult for the ignition coil to install. A lot of people just drop the coil down in there. As a result, a lot of people just end up putting the ignition coil in the engine, leaving it sit on the top of the spark plug. After a couple of weeks, it starts backing off the spark plug, and of course, you get misfire, right? So normally what we suggest to our customers is spread a little dielectric grease around the rib portion of the ignition coil.
I went ahead and put some grease on all the boots of the coils so they slide down in there a little easier. Before we're going to put these in, I want to reconnect the wires. So once you put them in, it'll be a little tight to get the wires on there. So I'm going to put them on before I put them in. Nice and snug, snap fit. Now, you want to slide it back down in there, but one thing Mark talked about was once you get it in there, a lot of people just push them in, okay, that was good, but you want to make sure that the connection is solid. So you have to push on it, and you'll feel it snap in. There, I felt it slide right over the spark plug. Good, solid connection.
And there we go. Well, I tell you what, Tommy, you're pretty much getting done over there. I've got all the new coils put in. Could you finish this up for me? I've got some really cool stuff that he brought that I still haven't had a chance to talk about yet.
Weapon X basically created a division called Takai Racing. For example, this is an ignition coil off of a Kawasaki KX450. And what we've done is we've replaced the ignition coil and ignition wire with just an ignition coil. So this ignition coil would actually connect directly to the spark plug. Again, that's part of our direct fire technology. We reduce the amount of resistance in the circuit, we improve electrical efficiency of the ignition coil, and create a hotter spark, a longer duration spark, which typically nets about 1 to 2 horsepower per coil.
You also have a big difference here between your wires and stock wires.
Exactly. Not only do we do ignition coils, spark plugs, we do ignition wires, plasma booster right here that we have that increases the voltage to the ignition coils. So again, it's all about increasing the efficiency of the ignition circuit.
That's awesome. At weaponxperformance.com, you can find out about what Tommy and I just installed in this vehicle, all of the other products that Mark has brought to show us today, and
I'm ready to go for a ride.
let's go. All right.